Yes, welcome into Sports Bit Betting Insight today, Wednesday, June 22nd. Paulie and Teddy with you, big game breakdown. We'll get back to the Dodgers. They're in action against the Nationals, and we continue our division previews. We finish out the NFC South with the Buccaneers, and let's make it two in a row with the play of the day. Bad bets, bad beats, bad bets. USA, USA, an easy winner for us on the play of the day. USA shut out 4-0 against Argentina. Mercy, they didn't have a shot on goal, Teddy.
That's what we talked about yesterday. I'm like, I don't know how U.S. is going to get a goal in this game. Turns out they couldn't get a shot. But, it's a class example. This line did not go through the roof, despite the fact that, as you said, Paulie, every contact you had that knows anything about soccer was like, Argentina's going to kill this team.
Yeah.
Why? Because people were betting with their hearts, not with their heads. And that's fine. If you want to be a casual bettor, you want to be a recreational player, you want some action on games, no problem. Bet with your heart, not with your head. If you want to make money, Look, I'm a Michigan grad, okay? And I bet against the Wolverines twice in national championship games, and I cashed them both.
Yes.
Against Louisville a couple years ago, -4, that was 2013. And, of course, the Ryan Leaf Rose Bowl, Wolverines were laying 6.5. They only won by 5. That was a great day for me. I won my bet, and I got to celebrate a national title. But the bottom line is, bet with your head, not with your heart.
That was a suitcase game. I saw Argentina in full time minus as low as 215 and then as high as 260 before the match started. So sharp money came in on Argentina, and you saw why. I don't think we'll never say never. I'm saying never. I don't think we'll be on their level. It's just our athletes in this country decide to play basketball, football. Over there, they're gods when they're good at soccer. I don't think we can ever get to that level, complete domination. And as we mentioned, they couldn't even get a shot on goal. More bad bets. How about the markets always react to lineup changes, and Votto was out with an illness, and if you had Texas, you were vomiting.
Yeah, I mean, here's the truth of it. Votto's been ice cold. All right, he has 1 extra base hit and 1 RBI over his last 11 games. When a guy's hitting at that level, I know he's a named player. I know he's a former All-Star. Is the line even supposed to move at all when he misses a game right now? I mean, think about, we were talking about this with Giancarlo Stanton. When the markets were moving while he wasn't just slumping. He was hurting Miami every time he was in the lineup. And yet, Stanton would be out, the markets would move against Miami, and boom, they were a better lineup without him. I'm not saying the Reds are a better lineup without Votto. I'm saying that certainly last night, Votto's absence was a non-factor. The Rangers were down 3 by the time they came to bat. They never took the lead. They got walloped as $2 chalk. Texas, a bad bet.
Yep, bad result for the house. It was a ton of Giants money, and they hammered the Pirates after getting shut out in the first meeting.
Yeah, I mean, in the opening game of the series, they couldn't hit Jeff Locke.
Come on, yeah.
But they sure could hit the rookie, Wilfredo Boskin, in his first big league start. He had 5 appearances out of the bullpen. And, of course, once they got to Boscan, then they got the dregs of that Pirates bullpen behind it, because you don't waste good relievers when you're facing a 15-1 deficit in any ball game. You get the back end of that bullpen. So, bad result for the house with the Giants' blowout victory.
The Braves do it again. 6 in a row, and they were huge dogs against Fernandez on the road.
Yeah, I mean, their last 4, they've been plus 165 or higher. I talked about how, I believe in Monday Sports Bet, if you bet the Braves and just let everything ride, you bet them for 1 unit on Friday, let everything ride by the end of the weekend, you were up 22 units. Well, if you let it ride again in Miami last night, you're up even more now, because obviously they came as big dogs. And, of course, they didn't beat Fernandez. Fernandez threw 7 innings of 1-hit ball. They beat the bullpen behind Jose Fernandez. You know what his remark is at home. I mean, he's been remarkable. I think it's only the second time that Miami's lost in home start for him in recent years. Of course, but it wasn't just Fernandez. They've also beat DeGrom and Matz and Harvey in New York. The Braves 9-27 at home. They're minus 17 units just playing at Turner Field, but they're 15-19 on the road. They're up 6 units, and they've won 6 in a row. Very different results. Strong home-road dichotomy from Atlanta, and they're playing their best ball of the season right now.
Since we started the baseball season, we've been telling you how bad Buchholz has been. Well, what do you think of what happened yesterday with this White Sox-Red Sox line?
Well, it was a little bit baffling. I mean, Sale opened as an underdog against Buchholz, at Fenway. And the markets corrected that mistake. Even with Buchholz pitching, he pitched a gem in his first game back in the rotation after a month in the bullpen. But, Sale hasn't been a dog and wasn't a dog at the opener or at the first pitch of that game at Fenway last night. He hasn't been a dog in any of his 15 starts. Of course, the White Sox 12-3 in those games, and I don't know if I'm making Sale an underdog to a whole lot of pitchers and a whole lot of venues right about now. Of course, there was some bad bet money in that game because the smart money obviously came on sale, but there was a ton of over money. I guess they were betting against Buchholz maybe. Nines got bet up to 9.5s, and Chris Sale and 9.5s don't mix even against the Red Sox lineup at Fenway.
Another day, another Twins over, and this one was easy.
Yeah, it sure did. Cash in the third inning, and those are always fun, when you have that side. The Phillies had scored 9 runs their last 6 games. They hadn't scored more than 2 in any of those games. They had 6 in the first 3 innings. They ended up with more runs in those last 6 games combined. But, of course, that Philadelphia bullpen isn't any good either. They were ranked number 23 in ERA prior to last night's game. The Twins' pen ranked number 27. And this prized Phillies prospect, Aaron Nola, he's given up 17 earned runs over 9.2 innings in his last 3 starts. Minnesota, 14-1-1 to the over, Paulie.
Yep.
The last 16 ball games. And as we've talked about, these over streaks, there is residual effect from one game to the next. It is not completely independent. Hot lineups stay hot. Overworked and tired bullpens stay overworked and tired. Minnesota's got both of those right about now. We'll get to this game more later in the show.
Cubs lose again at home against the Cardinals.
Yeah, and now it's back-to-back losses for Chicago 4 times this year, not 3. They have only won 3-game skid, though, all season. The Cards, look, they're not going to lay down for the Cubs. Now 4-4 against Chicago this year. And, of course, the best rivalry in baseball this side of Boston, New York. But even with St. Louis winning the first 2 games of the series, the Cubs still have a 10.5-game lead over the Cards in the division.
Yes, and one bad beat. The Angels plus $1.45, 2-1 lead in the bottom of the 9th, and they blow it.
Oh, yeah, Hector Santiago is back-to-back gems, and this is a guy whose season-long numbers stink, so pay attention to him, because all of a sudden he seems to have figured it out. But yeah, 2-1 lead in the bottom of 9th here, Houston Street, save it for us. Oh, how about walk, stolen base, walk, infield single, loaded him up for the cleanup hitter, Carlos Correa. And he hits the game-winning walk-off. They called it a single. Street throws 21 pitches, only 10 of them strikes. He didn't record an out. Don't look now, but the Astros, Paulie, are back to 500. You know when the last time they were at 500?
Start of the season.
Yeah, 1-1 on April 6th.
Wow.
They split the first 2 games of the year with the Yankees.
Yeah.
Worth noting, again, future players. Houston to win the division? Do we think about that maybe if we can find a good number? They're only 10 games behind the Rangers. They cut that whole lead against the Mariners, only a half game behind Seattle right now. And they sure look live to me to make some noise between now and when the time this season is through. Houston, a bet-on squad right now.
All right, we got the Buccaneers coming up. Up next, big game breakdown, Nationals and the Dodgers, Mariners, and the Tigers on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Always on the go? Bet365 has one of the top mobile platforms in today's market. Sign up today and don't let your busy life keep you out of the game.
Back on SportsBit, as always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com, Nationals and the Dodgers. Ross against Urias. Urias and the Dodgers, $1.20, 7.5 the total. After opening up on the road against the Mets and the Cubs, he settled down at home. 2 home starts, 9 innings pitched, 1 run, 8 hits, 2 walks, and 15 strikeouts. He struck out 15 of the 36 batters faced. Now the question is he ready to ramp it up with higher innings counts now that he's at home and he can get going here, Teddy, with a couple of starts under his belt?
Well, we're talking about a guy that has a grand total of 1 out in his 5 starts after the 5th inning. So, basically, he's been a 5-inning pitcher so far. Maybe they get a little bit more out of him. I wouldn't count on Urias suddenly becoming the type of guy who is going to start throwing 7, 8, 9 innings of work. And it's also worth noting, and Dan, you don't know if this is a huge issue, but it might be, because the Dodgers are currently in a Kershaw, Kazmir, Urias mode. Mm-hmm. And when that means 3 lefties back to back to back, some opponents are going to see all 3 of them in a row, and that may limit the effectiveness of their young lefty at least a little bit.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. They need to break that up. Why would you do that?
Because their 4th and 5th starters are even worse.
Yeah, okay, but you gotta. I don't want to see the go back to back to back, though. So Ross going for the Nationals, 6-4 with a 3.13. He's been solid at the back end of the rotation, but this is not quite the progression that the Nationals were hoping for.
No, and this is a guy that we liked a lot earlier in the season. But when you look at these numbers, check out this graphic right here. The strikeouts per 9 are down. The walks per 9 are up. The ground ball rate is down. The swinging strike percentage is down. He's been good enough not to send up any alarms. But this is a 23-year-old pitcher, I should say. And when he's going in all the wrong directions across all of those categories from his first season, it does raise some concerns. And he's also benefited from a good ride. 116 pitchers have thrown at least 60 innings of work so far. And this is one stat that I really like to start looking at in June. The DBF, difficulty of batters faced. Mm-hmm. That means how tough opponents are you facing. You're facing the good hitting lineups every day. You're facing weak hitting lineups every time you go out. Well, Ross so far of the 116 pitchers who've thrown at least 60 innings, he's number 104 in DBF. So, the OPS of the average opposing batter is 702. That's the equivalent of every one of his games being against, let's say, the Reds at 703 or the Yankees at 698, right in that range. He has faced a weak slate of opposing hitters thus far.
All right, great numbers there. That's a great stat. Mariners and the Tigers, liveoddsportsbookreview.com. It's Iwakuma against Fulmer. Tigers $1.38.5 the total. The Mariners were hoping Iwakuma could be a solid number 2 guy in the rotation, but a lot like Joe Ross here, where you see the decline across the board in all these key categories.
Yeah, and Iwakuma was a guy who made me a lot of money. His first couple years in the league, he was mowing guys down, particularly at home. That has not been the case here in 2016. And again, you look at the career numbers, you look at the numbers from last year, and you compare those on this graphic to numbers from this year. Everything's down. The ERA's up. The fielding independent pitching, the FIP is up. The strikeouts per 9 are down. The walks per 9 are down. The ground ball rate is way down from where it's been. The swinging strike percentage is way down. Now, it's one thing to come back from injury in 2015, where his numbers were slightly below the career norms in several of those categories. But now, we're talking about a guy who's coming back at the age of 35. And yeah, he might be healthy. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of upside with Iwakuma at this stage of his career.
Well, he's been helped out to get some breathing room, and the rest of the rotation's been helped out by Cano, who's had a great season.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Look at the numbers right now. And again, he's going to eclipse last year's home run total by the All-Star break. He might hit more homes this season than his first 2 as a Mariner combined. His slugging percentage up over 100 points from where it was a season ago. And again, he had 35 dingers in the first 2 years combined. This year already with 19.
Fulmer got pulled against Kansas City in his last outing after something he hadn't done in nearly a month, which was give up a run. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, that was a 6 streak that he was on.
Yeah.
And we talked about it here on Sportsbet a couple times, where he got to 33.1 innings of work, scoreless, while giving a single run. And again, the run he gave up a Salvador Perez home run when the game was 0-0 in the bottom of the 6th. Now, it could have been worse against KC in his last start. Fulmer gave up 4 other hits and 4 walks, but none of those 8 base runners scored. And that's been the key to Fulmer's success so far this season. He's not allowing base runners to come around and score. The strand rate, league average, 73.2%. Fulmer, 86.5%. That's a significant improvement. Now, who's the real Fulmer? Look at this chart, Paulie. It tells us a whole lot about a pitcher who has put up some very impressive numbers early, but may not be able to last. The ERA, 2.43. The FIP, 3.78. The XFIP, 3.97. The Sierra, 4.04. Yeah, advanced metrics only call him a little bit better than the league average, even after that phenomenal run of 33.1 innings without a single run scored. One concern, the guy does need to have better command than walking 3.5 batters for every 9 innings if he's going to be successful in the big leagues long term.
There's always great stats, good numbers, and 2 interesting games coming up later tonight. We finish off the NFC South up next with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we try to keep it going with 2 in a row on the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
All right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers over under 7 wins last year, 6-10 straight up, 7-9 ATS, 9-7 of the over. The mainstream numbers -5 in turnovers, 5th ranked offense, 10th in defense, plus 0.7 yards per play. That was 5th in the NFL, and we have a new coach. Dirk Cutter takes over.
Yeah, but we got to talk about these mainstream stats for a minute. They had the 5th ranked offense last year.
Yeah.
They had the 10th ranked defense last year. They outgained their opponents on every snap by 0.7 yards. 5th in the league, and they finished 6-10.
Won 6 games, yeah.
So, I mean, there's been fair bit of criticism for management. They went through Raheem Morris and dumped Morris fairly quickly, and they dumped Greg Schiano fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And now they hire Lovie Smith, and now they dumped Lovie Smith fairly quickly. But when you put up those kind of numbers, statistically, and you only win 6 games, there are definitely some concerns. Now, Dirk Cutter, this is a guy that you and I both know pretty well, Paulie. Obviously, he's been a big influence in West Coast football, certainly earlier in his career. In fact, we wouldn't even be talking about Boise State every year in college football if it wasn't for Dirk Cutter. That's where he got his start. But since that time, he's kind of been around the block.
Arizona State, yep. NFL OC, Jags, Falcons, Buccaneers. First time coaching gig, but no rookie head coach. First head coaching job, but not a rookie head coach when you see the experience he has. And here he is. He's back. Mike Smith now is the new defensive coordinator.
Well, remember, Cutter worked for Smith as his offense coordinator in Atlanta.
That's right.
So these guys tend to they clearly like working with each other.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that. I don't think that Mike Smith was a bad defensive coach by any stretch of the imagination. The offensive coordinator is an interesting hire. Todd Monken. Now, Cutter's supposed to be the guy who's calling the plays, just like he did last year. Remember, he was the OC in Tampa last year. So the rapport that he developed with Jameis Winston will continue.
Yeah.
But Todd Monken's going to be the offensive coordinator. And Monken, he worked under Cutter for 3 years in Jacksonville. He spent the last 3 years turning Southern Miss from 0-12 into a 9-5 record last year. And not only that, Cutter's, it's a new coach, a new head coach, but Cutter's staying as obviously the offensive coordinator to the head coach. And all the offensive coaches, except for the wide receiver coach, stayed following the coaching change. So this isn't a clear out the organization, let's get everybody new in, like we talked about with, Chip Kelly in San Francisco, for example. This is we're promoting from within, and we're not making these wholesale changes, at least not on the offensive side of the football. A relatively smooth transition between the end of the Lovie Smith era and the beginning of the Dirk Cutter era.
I came across an interesting quote from Cutter. He was doing a radio show, and they asked him about going for 2 after every touchdown. And he said, well, we looked at it and we studied it, and the math says that's what you're supposed to do. But the second we lose 21-19 and we fail, and we go 0 for 2 and lose a game, I don't want to hear it from the media. Well, that's not the right answer. The correct answer is what you said first. If the math says go for 2 every time, then you should do it. Who cares what some guy in Tampa thinks if you lose the game? How about this? How about you go 2 out of 3 on 2-point conversions, and as a result, you win the game? You have job security.
I'm with you in theory, Paulie. I really am, because obviously the math shows pretty clearly if you go for 2, you're likely to have more success and create uncomfortable situations for your opponents. Look what Oregon does in college football all the time. And, it hasn't been adapted at the NFL level on a consistent basis, although we saw the Steelers do it a whole lot last year, going up 8-0 and going for 2 off that first score. Now, the question is, how thick-skinned is the coach?
Right.
Can you handle the heat that you're going to take when you lose a game because you went for 2 on every following every touchdown, and the 2-point conversions didn't work out for you in that game? The coaches who can take the heat, or have that type of job security, maybe make that move. A guy like Cutter, I don't know if he can, if his skin is thick enough to take the criticism, because Paulie, what those local talk show hosts are going to do. They're going to rip the guy who loses the game, and they'll find reasons to do it. Doesn't matter if the reasons are valid or not.
Yep. So Doug Martin, strong rebound of the season last year. Strong rebound season, rather. Signed a big contract to stay put. Solid receiving core with Evans, Jackson, and Jenkins. And last year's number 2 pick, Kenny Bell from Nebraska, who got hurt in training camp and didn't play. This is important, though. There's zero depth behind the starters. You got to watch this team close for injuries.
Yeah, and that's a key here because, I mean, I was stunned when I started doing my work on Tampa how little depth they have at wide receiver. And Evans is a playmaker, and Jackson's a playmaker, and Safarian Jenkins is a playmaker. Kenny Bell might be that. But if any or multiple of these guys get hurt, this team's going to struggle. I'm telling you that right now. Pay attention to the wide receiver injuries in Tampa Bay. But let's talk about famous Jameis, man. He lost 20 pounds in the offseason, reportedly. He's looking to be even quicker moving around in the pocket. The guy had a solid rookie season. He had 4,000 passing yards. He had more touchdowns, 22 than interceptions, 15. He only took 27 sacks. This is the number that impressed me. 7.6 yards per pass. This wasn't dink and dunk. This is take shots downfield. That's Cutter's offense. And of course, he had an 84.2 QB rating, which is pretty good for a rookie, plus 54 rushes and 6 touchdowns. He may not be Marcus Mariota, scrambling around back there, but certainly Winston is a guy who's capable of making plays with his feet as well as his arms, and that never gets recorded properly when it comes to quarterback statistics.
I thought the O-line overachieved with 2 rookie starters last year, but Logan Mankins retired, and the potential replacement, Sweezy, has big shoes to fill. How about the defense?
Yeah, I mean, they brought in some veteran help on D. They brought in Robert Ayers as an instant pass rush in theory. A couple of veteran linebackers, Brent Grimes and Darrell Smiths. But more than anything, I mean, Lovie Smith's Tampa 2 defense, bend but don't break, or, the cover 2, it doesn't work in the modern NFL. And I think that's why Lovie Smith got fired more than anything else. They had only 6 interceptions last year. And it's a unit in the secondary allowed a QB rating of 102.5 last year. That's 70% completions allowed. That's not getting it done at the NFL level. So we can expect much more aggressiveness out of the secondary this year. And of course, their first round pick, Vernon Hargraves, the cornerback out of Florida, he should help right away in that regard.
Yes, and I'll tell you who's going to help out right away too. Aguayo, the kid they drafted out of Florida State. They had a ton of kicking issues. They say, hey, we lost a lot of close games. We're going to solve that right now. And they took Aguayo high in the draft.
Yeah, and you and I argued about this once before. I figured we'd argue about it again. I like Aguayo. I don't care if you take a kicker too high in the draft, if that's your kicker. The last time I remember a kicker getting drafted high was Sebastian Janikowski. Right. Guess what? It's 15 years later. He's still kicking in Oakland. He can still kick a 50-yarder. Another guy I remember getting drafted early, Jason Hanson in Detroit. Kicked there for 20 years. He could kick a 50-yarder. He got the job done. So to solve that problem long-term with a guy like Aguayo, I have no problem with the team wasting a draft pick on a great special teams player. Brian Anger, you remember this guy in college, Paulie?
No, I don't.
The punter. He was a punter out of Cal. He was the best punter in college that year. And he averaged 46.8 yards per punt in Jacksonville. And then, only 40.5 net.
Is that the guy who cut himself with the axe?
No.
The different guy? With Jack Del Rio chopping wood?
That was that's a decade ago. Anger's the punter that they signed. But my point being was only that Anger was the best punter in college by far that year. He was a monster. And at the NFL level, he's average. He's okay. He hasn't been great. The 40.5 net, again, 25th in the NFL last year. This is a guy who was like, every year they're taking the best punter out of college, That being said, Tampa special teams should be a notch or two better this year than they were a season ago.
All right, what do you think of the schedule?
Well, last year was much easier than average. This year it's significantly tougher than last year, and it's in the top quartile of the NFL in terms of strength of schedule jump from season to season. I like a lot about Tampa. I like everything about Tampa except this schedule. Of course, the teams from the NFC South, they play the NFC West and the AFC West. So you have all these trips back and forth to the West Coast. Then they have the Bears and the Cowboys as their 2 extra games, as Tampa. Both teams who are expected to be better this season compared to last year. They only have 2 road games between week 3 and week 10. It's like they play their first 2 on the road, and then they have a long stretch that's very friendly. But that also means they have 3 different sets of back-to-back roadies. And that means, again, from a strength of schedule and from a good spot, bad spot standpoint, Tampa's up against it a little bit this year. That's my biggest concern about the Bucs.
Early lean?
Early lean is still over.
Okay.
even with the
Yep.
schedule. I think Tampa's a team on the come, but that schedule concerns me enough that right now that's only a lean. I don't know that I get to the window betting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over 7.
And we're halfway through. You can go to sportsbookreview.com. All our team previews are up there so far as we're done with the West and the South so far. We start the AFC North coming up tomorrow. All right. Money time. Play of the day. Hey, all right, broke out of it. Had an easy winner yesterday. Where are we going?
Hey, this is something we've been talking about on SportsFit for the last week and a half. We're going to ride it for at least one day.
Sure.
Let's take a look at game number 929, 930. Minnesota and Philadelphia. We'll go over 8.5. That, the play of the day. This Twins, again, 14-1-1 in the over.
Yep.
If you haven't made any money with it yet, that's the point. It's not too late. These are streaks that can and will continue indefinitely. We'll ride it here tonight. Twins, Phillies, over 8.5. That's the play of the day.
All right, fun show. Good luck out there, and we'll talk to you Thursday on SportsBit Betting Insight today.